artist, Miss Maggie here. Today, we are going to draw a sphere. Though actually, this is a perfect project to do with any sorts of ball, like a baseball, tennis ball, soccer ball, basketball. Any of those are fantastic for this project, but if you don't have one of those, look in your kitchen. You might find a lime. I picked a guava on a walk yesterday, or even something that is close to round but not perfectly, like an onion. Or a friend of mine grew a pomegranate here on Maui. I've never known anyone who grew a pomegranate on Maui. Have you ever tried one? They're delicious. So, what are you going to need today? These are your supplies. You will need a pencil, an eraser. We're going to be doing drawing and shading today, and you're going to need a piece of drawing paper. A small paper is fine, but if you think you might draw a couple objects, then use one of the larger drawing papers. Also, if you're running low on the small ones, that's fine. I'm going to use the large drawing paper because I'm actually going to draw two objects. Of course, you are going to need a real life round sphere. As I said, it can be a piece of sports equipment, or it can be a piece of food, or some other toy. I found this beautiful glass float. Oh, I love that. I'm going to draw that, but I'm also going to draw the pomegranate. So, if I'm going to draw two, I need the big paper, and one more thing you're going to need. You are going to need a good light source. I have this light on, and you see if I turn it off, my shadows are very different. And so see how my objects have a light side and a dark side, and there's a shadow on the table. Set yourself up like that, either light from a window or light from overhead, something where you've got light, shadow, and shadow on the table. Okay, go find your objects. I'll meet you right back here, and we'll make some art. Today is all about looking closely. We are going to be looking for the lines that are on our objects. And we're going to be looking closely for the values, the dark areas and the light areas. And you can see on these objects, we have that there. The first thing we are going to do is draw our circle. And now circles, they can be challenging to draw well, but let me show you a couple tricks. First of all, we're going to draw lightly and we're going to sketch. So your first line that you draw doesn't have to be the line that you keep. See how I am practicing like this? And so I'm finding the lines that I like. And a lot of these lines I'm going to erase. I'm going to try that one more time down here. You don't have to draw two objects, but I'm going to demonstrate both an object made by humans and an object made by nature. And so I have two there. And now as I have some basic circles, I'm going to find the lines I want to keep. See how lightly I started? And now I'm darkening it a little bit, but I'm still going very lightly. And you can go even lighter than this. I'm using a dark pencil so that you can see. I brought plants in from outside, and then I have little friends come in too. I'm using a dark pencil so that you can see on the film what I'm doing. But if I was doing this without filming, I would make this even lighter. So, draw along with your object. How is your circle coming along? If you have an area that you're not happy with, then draw the line that you like better. Have I used an eraser yet? I haven't. I am just getting the lines where I want them, and then once I have the circles, I can get rid of the lines that I don't want. And so now I'm getting rid of the parts that are going to get in the way. go. Now, if you have an organic object, like my pomegranate here, I'm going to notice that there's some parts of the fruit that are not actually perfectly round. Like I notice that it's a little bit flat over here, and it's a little bit flat over here. And I'm going to take those areas out as you go. If you notice something's not perfectly round, then add that in. But most of the details like this and all those strings, I'm going to get to that in a moment, because we want to use some guidelines to find where these lines really are. I am going to draw a mark at the top of my sphere and at the bottom, right and left. I'm going to do the same thing on this top, bottom, right, left. Now, those marks, they're going to disappear. I'm not keeping them. But what they do is they help us see where the lines are on our objects. Let's look at my photo of a basketball, since I don't have a real one. And you are all looking at real objects, not photos of them, right? But even on this, if I make a mark here, 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 and here, I can see that this curve here, I can see that it starts a little to the right of the top, and it goes all the way down, and it turns this way, or just after the middle, this way. But it's about close to halfway between the middle and there. See how I'm looking at that? I can look at how this line here, it's a diagonal, but is it really straight across? Almost, because it's coming straight at me. Interesting. But this line here is going at an angle, so that one is not going straight across. Draw. If you are drawing sports equipment, look at how those lines go, where they come from the edge, where they cross or change direction, and then where they end. That mark, I can see it ends right on the bottom. Guess what? I can do the same thing with these. On my float, my man-made object, I notice that there's an imaginary mark here, 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 and here. So I see that this rope starts a little to the right of center, a little bit over from there, and it goes to right about middle this way, but not in the center. It goes to here. But look at that. Does it have a straight line? Even though it's a rope and it's pulled tight, it's going around a sphere. And so that becomes a curve. So I see that that curve starts here, goes this way, and it connects. And then there's another curve, and that one comes from above the right-hand mark, and that goes there too, and that's curving that way. And this one here, I can see it's curving right over the edge, and yeah, that one's a little to the right of the center, but it has to curve back a little bit to get to there. And this one, here's the bottom, it's to the left of that, and it's curving this way. And these aren't all coming to the same point because there's a knot there. So you're going to be noticing different sorts of details on yours. But look closely. If your object has lines on it, then you're going to be looking for where those lines go. I see I have some lines going just about around the outside edges there, but then this rope comes in and it curves this way, connects, and then it goes off the edge again. I'm noticing where it comes into the circle and where it goes to the outside. So I can make that a lot better still. But I'm going to look at my pomegranate now, because I bet if you have a natural object, it has shapes and lines that are part of it too. Or, of course, the biggest one is its stem. And so I see that that is up here in the upper left-hand quadrant. And I see a curve there. So that's there, it's curved. I see some lines coming out. And I see some more shapes here. I see an oval here. And I can see that from the camera's view part here, if I could see right through it, I could see the outside edge of the pomegranate. So I'm going to put that right that, and then there's that one little piece that I think is like a leftover bit of the flower. And so now I'm adding in a little bit of those details. Let's use our guidelines to find some of the other details. Like for instance, I see some marks over here. That's up between this mark and this mark. And I see these little marks and they seem to be going in a curve. Do you see that? How they're following there? So I have those marks there. I notice that there's a mark that comes down from the stem and it's getting close to the middle here, but it's still above it and it's below the stem. So I'm going to put that mark there. And I see a red mark that I think is just about middle and there. Oh wait, I think that one's more like that. So I used those guidelines, top, bottom, left, and right, to find where the marks, the details that go around my sphere are. Now, this one didn't have very many lines across, but even if you look at an onion, that has lines that go across. And do you see how those lines curve too? You can see that in a lot of different fruits, vegetables, and especially your sports equipment. Okay, now let's do value. On the back of your paper, let's do a little value warm-up. What we're going to do is take your pencil and see how lightly you can go. And if you can go even lighter, realize you can go even lighter. How lightly can you go? And then go in the other direction. How many values can you create as you get darker and darker and darker? You might go back over it. See if you can have it so that your values are smooth and gradual, so that I am getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And so a lot of times I use my pencil like this. See how I'm just moving it with my fingers? Sometimes I'll also try it like this for shading. See which way you like it better and can get smooth shadows from dark to light. Here is how we are going to use value, dark and light, to make your drawings of spheres look round. Okay, let's look at the pomegranate first. Do you see how it has some dark areas over here and over here? And then it has some light areas. It even has a highlight that's perfectly white. So I'm going to start using my shading to make the dark areas dark. And all the shading is coming from where the stem is. That's where it's coming from, no matter what. And I saw that it has a little bit of a highlight there, and then it gets darker again. So I'm putting that in, and oh, I never got rid of my guidelines, my little marks there. I can let those disappear now. And so I am looking for where it is darkest and where it is lightest. It's going to have a side that is in shadow. It's like the earth when it's at night. So I'm seeing where do those areas go, and I see that the actual stem area has a lot of lightness on it, but a little bit of darkness right there, and then at its base it's very dark. Doesn't matter which direction. Interesting. But then that darkness comes out, and if it's easier to move the paper to shade from different directions, you can do that. Instead of trying to contort your hand around, move the paper. So that's much easier to draw like that. And so I'm going to keep on shading here. And this takes some time. Make it so that it's even. And notice where some areas are darker and some areas actually don't need so much shading. Like over here, it doesn't need as much. And sometimes I actually move my wrist and see how that's actually round. I want my marks to go around the sphere. But here in the center, they're not as round. They actually are going to be straighter where I'm closest. Just like that line coming at the camera is pretty straight, but then the ones going in other directions are rounder. And I'm also going to look at what sorts of textures are on here. Some of this needs to be smoothed out, and guess what? I can use my finger to smooth that out. That's something I can definitely do. And ooh, let's put some of those textures and details that are up there. That area in there is very dark, and that's going to make the stem stand out. See right here. And I'm going to darken some of those marks that I noticed. And do you notice how I lost my highlights? I shaded right over them. Well, if that happens, you get to go back in with your eraser. See how I am making the highlights again? That's a lot of fun. And so I can highlight, and I can shade again a little bit. I can use my finger. And a lot of times one of the darkest areas is going to be right down here at the base. So make it so that we know it's on the table by having that. One of the other important things is that notice my shadows, how great they are there. Let's put in the shadows. I see it starts by the base and it goes right off my paper. And I see that, oh no, it doesn't go there. See, it is up by the stem. All of that is going to be shadow. And so I'm going to shade that in, and I'm going to shade it as evenly as I can. And you might notice your shadow gets lighter in some areas and darker in others. Do that with your shading. Make that shading, putting that shadow in is going to help your fruit or ball or whatever it is look three-dimensional. And I do think it should fade out a little bit there, so I'm going to fade it out. And so, as I finish it, I'm going to double check. Where are my darkest spots? Where are the darkest areas? Double check that you have the darkest areas in your pomegranate. And where are the highlights? Where are the spots that are the lightest? Ooh, anywhere that you missed? I think this area is not done well enough yet. But not that dark either. More like that, but dark right in the center there. I think that's coming together. How is yours coming? I'm going to do my sea glass ball now. Now for this one, I'm going to again look where are the darkest areas, where are the lightest areas, and what direction should I be shading. So I noticed that the rope is the darkest part, and I am darkening that in, and I bet you can also tell that I sped up this footage here. Take your time. Look for those dark areas. Look for those light areas. If there are lines that go around what you are drawing, then notice, are those darker or lighter? And look at the surface of your object. What is the texture like? Where is it dark? Where is it light? And just take your time putting those details in. Keep noticing more. You can also use your finger to smudge, and you can use your eraser to make areas lighter again. Keep looking. Notice the shadow. What shape is the shadow? Are some parts of the shadow darker than others? Put those details in too. Go back and finally look at your piece again. Where are those dark areas and those light areas? That's just the question to keep asking yourself the whole way through, noticing where the value is different. I'm looking back at my pomegranate as well, seeing what other little details, and I think I'm just about there. Here is your reflection question. Your job was to look really closely at some sort of sphere. As you studied it, what details surprised you? What details did you notice, not at first, but over time as you really looked closely and drew it? Describe those details. Okay, I can't wait to see your drawings. Remember, take a photo of your creation, turn it in on Google Classroom, clean up your space, and put your artwork up where your family can enjoy it. I can't wait to see your artwork online and to make more art with you next time. Ahui-ho! Have you ever seen the inside of a pomegranate fruit before?
wow, that's beautiful. Look at that. And also these little parts here. Mmm, delicious.